What excites me but also makes me nervous with the role I have is that so much more is now being said about what AI is going to do. Just try it, experiment, and find what you want, who you wish you could get access to more convenience for. And if you could do something like even 2% faster because generative AI can help you there, 2% times like the number of times in a day, that's pretty incredible.
Welcome back to the CPA Intelligence and Ethics Show. I'm your host, Garth Shariff. This is the podcast where we explore how AI is transforming the accounting profession and how CPAs can lead with purpose, ethics, and intelligence. And I'm excited to be once again joined by an amazing professional who we've interviewed before, I would like to call a friend, and continues to be at the forefront of AI innovation in the professional services world, Davin Gnanapragasam of KPMG Canada. Davin is the Chief Technology Officer for Tax, a partner and the national leader for Ignition Tax, where he owns the national tax technology strategy. We first spoke to Davin at Collision 2024 major tech conference, and that's where Davin shared how AI was beginning to transform workflows, communication across the department that he's in charge of. And 1 year later, recorded live at Web Summit in Vancouver, we asked Davin what has changed. And what we learned is both energizing and deeply relevant for every CPA listening today. From executive buy-in and cultural shifts to frontline experimentation and generative AI literacy, Davin in this conversation walks us through how KPMG has gone from talking the talk to walking the walk. But this isn't just a conversation about big firm strategy. We also explore what smaller firms and individual CPAs can do right now to find their first in with AI, whether it's writing better prompts, automating simple tasks, or rethinking how we define productivity. Davin shares practical and honest insights that are especially valuable in a profession grappling with change, skepticism, and opportunity all at once. If you've been wondering how to start, where to go, or what it all means to lead in the age of AI, this conversation with Davin is for you. Let's dive in. All right, I'm excited to be back with Davin a year later. Different place, talking about technology and AI at KPMG. So Davin is the lead technology strategy for tax and legal with KPMG and the practice lead for the Ignition Tax, a team with an entrepreneurial mindset striving to evolve our delivery or KPMG's delivery and service offerings through innovative product development. Davin, we spoke at Collision in Toronto last year, and our conversation was the rollouts for AI solutions that was happening with your lead. Yeah. And I think I wanted to start off this conversation a year later, because we're still seeing a lot of things in AI, and maybe some thought about whether we are seeing enough or there's some disappointment. A year later, any of the deployment of AI solutions, Clio, OnePort, how do you feel your practitioners have moved with it a year later? Is it they're embracing it? Is there resistance? What have you been seeing a year later?
Yeah, first of all, I'll say thank you. It is cool to see you again a year later. Hard to imagine a year's already passed. Different location, but kind of same spirit of everything we're doing. So thank you. Thank you to the audience as well for the opportunity to share our story. To your question, a lot has changed, and I think I'd say a lot hasn't changed, maybe. I think a lot of energy and excitement at the executive level is the biggest thing I've seen advanced in a positive way. Certainly I can speak to our organization. And what I mean by that is the embracing of what AI can do for our firm, right? So, talking specifically within the tax and legal space, but also broaden that across advisory audit, just our firm, right? What can we do and what impact it makes? And transformation and change like this is slow moving, right? I especially have seen in my journey the slow movingness at the executive level. And that's not a knock by any means. It's that there's so many things to factor in when it comes to AI adoption, technology adoption. What's it going to mean to people? What's the messaging to people? Are they scared? Does it mean our jobs? So putting all that aside, what I've seen a year over is that we've really gone full board. We talked the talk a year ago when we first met, but we're starting to walk the walk at that level. And so what that means practically is, coming up with how is our AI frameworks for internal usage? How are we going to make sure we speak to our clients to give them comfort that they're not going to just see an output that's basically AI generated? And so, we can talk a bit more about that in terms of what does that mean practically. The other side of it is, to be honest, like what excites me but also makes me nervous with the role I have is that so much more is now being said about what AI is going to do, right? Like a year ago when we met, I remember talking about this is cool. Even for me, my journey and using it, leveraging it, I was kind of like dabbling in. Now, I like to think that the productivity that I have has gone 10x, being able to leverage it. But the narrative is this, I think, oh my gosh, AI is legitimately going to be taking my job. Or like this concept of like, okay, well, if we're not AI literate and in there today, then we're already behind. I worry a little bit about some of the push that I hear outside our walls, but then it leads into our walls of, are we already behind? Right. And I think just from a practical perspective, AI is so new, right? Like it's still in its infancy. And sometimes I worry that the kind of pulling the trigger, we have to do something really quickly because we're behind, takes us down the wrong paths. So I don't know if that's making sense, but just generally speaking, exciting space, lots of movement, but are we doing the right thing? And is slower better? Not slower is the wrong word, but kind of instead of doing 20 things, do 5 really good things. And that's what I think I've noticed over the last year, that we've come to realize some POCs were originally like, let's go crazy. Let's do like 1,000 different use cases. And then when you really look back and be like, actually only like 5% of those resulted in value add.
Right.
And so maybe we need to not try to go too wide, really focus in. So anyways, I'll pause.
Well, no, I think it's really interesting, the framing a year later, that the conversational space for AI is broader for the general audience in terms of what they're hearing, the AI hype, and that might be bringing more anxiety maybe a little bit to like what you're doing and if you're doing enough and competing. And I wanted to, taking your response, I wanted to look at a couple things. So, AI is moving very quickly, and we have 2 layers from what I hear here. We have the executive at KPMG, which you're part of, looking at solutions that make sense. And it seems a year later that there is more of a embrace of that. Let's get on this from that side. And then there's the practitioner side where you're deploying this and practitioners are using these. So what about those 2 levels? Are they at the same space where here are the executive sides, let's go, we're on this? Are the practitioners the same way? Like where are they in terms of their embrace?
That's a good call out. So I would say the practitioners are just as excited. The challenge is in a large organization is how do you get everyone swimming in the same direction though, right? And so I'll go back to that point of, I think over the last year and change, we were kind of, let's cast the net wide. Let's enable our practitioners because there is incredible excitement and go at it. And so then you start to realize, well, is that actually gaining the productivities, right? Are we actually gaining productivity as well as reducing risk, or are we increasing risk, right, at the cost of maybe productivity? Now, those are questions that I think we're all as an organization coming to realize are not that we weren't considering them before, but you start to see some use cases, some experiments that's happened over the last year. And that's not to take away from the energy that our practitioners have to use it, which is awesome, right? And especially when you start thinking about our juniors, the wrong word, but folks that are maybe a little bit more tech literate, right? And using it in their everyday, the creativity that you start to see of how we can leverage generative AI specifically into our everyday is pretty cool. It's pretty cool, it's special, and there's energy there. It's like one of the things that we try to do that I'm very happy with, kind of creating this digital community, insert kind of whatever buzzy words you want to go, champions, yada, 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 but is like ultimately creating like this Reddit style community where whether it's Microsoft Copilot, which we're hugely invested in when it comes to our Microsoft Alliance, or our Clio, our OnePort, our different generative AIs, is seeing the energy from our practitioners to share use cases once we open up the door, right? And it has been just an explosion of possibility and excitement. And so when you ask the question, how is our practitioners doing? I'd say they're 10x. But I'll go back to where we're at. And it's not meant to be a but as in a negative. It's being like, okay, well, now how do we harness all this energy, all these different use cases, and really realize, I think, 2 important things, which is obvious productivity gains and betterment of our offering, while also giving clients confidence that they're not losing the human part of what makes our business and our industry so valuable, right? And we can touch on that a bit more.
Well, I think we're going to go down that road because we talked about this, and I think this is going to be the narrative around AI. And again, KPMG and your role, your practitioners, the people that are on your team, if you look at that, your organization, you're on the advanced side of this. And then there's other CPAs and professionals not working for a large organization that are kind of, where are they?
Yeah.
What are they doing with these tools? And they have to kind of make their own choices. But one of the discussions around this, and we talked about this last year, but the productivity, 10x, 5x, and where that line is between productivity and freeing up the practitioner to do more of the critical thinking, but also the fear and anxiety that it is taking away parts of the job. And a year later, where is that? Do you see that with the practitioners? Are there, that Reddit community group, is they're sharing use cases? Are they sharing that discussion? What's happening in that space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I see this and I look at, I'll share my own personal journey, right? At the beginning of it, I'll say transparently, when this whole generative AI started coming out, wearing my CTO hat, it was like, okay, well, I better get on this train as well, right? I got to at least understand it to talk. Otherwise, someone's going to say like, are you actually the tech lead? And so that created curiosity, and where I've seen my own personal journey, and so then trying to bring it to our tax and legal folks and our clients, is that what's that first in? What's that first in that's going to give you convenience? Because really, I go back to Googling, right? When Googling first came out, or Google, excuse me, right? And then the expression Google it was not normalcy. It was effectively allowing you to find things faster. But the first pioneers, let's just say, of Google, and the first generation of prompting, was how good are you at searching, right? So park for a second how good the indexing of Google was to be able to find the resources. But that one little box, right? If you gain the ability to learn how to say that Google prompt, right? You would effectively get access to information faster than your peers. And so I bring that up to say, when I look at prompting and chat GPT and just generally generative AI, the energy that comes out of our practitioners for usage is really tying into how fast are people realizing that it's not about their jobs being eliminated. It's not about their roles being eliminated. It's about actually how is your role adapting to do less of the tasks that you used to do, not because now you're going to be more productive, but actually you can do more. Right. You can do your work faster. You can Google something faster. You can get information faster, and you'd move your starting point. And that's really important. So the starting point for us is what we're really trying to tackle, and make sure our clients, because ultimately we don't want to remove the judgment, the constructive thinking. That's our value. It's so important that we change the frame with the mindset of our people and our clients to be comfortable that what we're using generative AI for isn't to say we're now not going to provide you that excellent service, that human interactive, as well as the quality of output. What we're going to do is we're going to give it to you even faster, right? And we're going to give you a little bit more than what you're used to, because our starting point is now much further ahead. And so this community, going back to kind of what are we saying, this community is really embracing the fact of what used to take me 2 hours now takes me 30 minutes or 5 minutes, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm still doing that overall deliverable. And it's hard though. It's really hard until people start to get a taste of it. And so what's been, I think for us, and I'll flip it into our clients, is how do you get a person, right? Not the energetic individual who's using ChatGPT all the time. Again, sometimes it's our younger folks, but actually our partners are senior individuals who have such information in there, and they're used to doing it a certain way, and they do it so well, to find that first convenience. Because as soon as you find that first convenience, maybe it's doing a little tax research, maybe it's trying to find something over your email, but actually now you don't have to scour through the inbox. Where was that? Maybe it's that meeting recap you have internally that actually now generates that recap, and you can trust that your juniors get it because look, it's listed right there. Once we find that first taste, oh man, we start to see in that community, people fly off there. And it's insane how much other use cases come up. But our trick is, what's your first in?
Right.
And the hyperbole kind of to everyone here is of all these crazy use cases. And so then there's this excitement to be that's the first in. Taxes are done, right? It's generative AI has done the work. And so there's an excitement and then kind of a letdown to be well, that's not actually reality. And then the flip side of being well, what do you mean taxes are going to get done, right? versus being like, no, that is a future place we can get to. It's a lot simpler. Right? Think of it more simpler. Think of it when you Googled something, you got more information faster. Generative AI provides you more information faster, sooner. That's the end.
And I think this is really good for the general audience here, those that are not experiencing this culturally at KPMG, because I think there can be disappointment. You use a prompt, you use Claude, you use ChatGPT, Gronk, whatever you might be using, and you're like, oh, well, I was doing it for this big thing versus the incremental way of learning how to prompt. And I think that might be a gap for those, again, those that are in KPMG and other large organizations that are just kind of working with this because you're doing the work and getting everyone on board. There's an advantage there. For those that are outside the space, it's almost like they're, they have to have this mentality, just like you did when you described your own journey. Otherwise, it's a challenge. So the question too for your practitioners that are using this, I can imagine there can be situations where they are disappointed or they don't feel like it's giving them their productivity. Like, how many of those conversations do you have where they're like, I don't know, this is not what I expected, or I don't trust it? And how do you overcome those? Yeah,
I mean, look, if I had that answer, I'd probably be on center stage and having a conversation. I think we're still figuring it out. The transformation part of what was our journey is to keep trying to do it, right? To make mistakes. That's honestly, I think what this generative AI, I'll go back to the executive level for a moment. Getting people excited at that level, not that they weren't before, because we as a firm we're all in on this and have been for a while, but really seeing that over the last year, we're practically now putting in policies and really generating or creating teams, supporting my team, but also widely having digital transformation teams that are really upskilling, teaching, engagement, awareness when it comes to the generative AI. That is allowing us to keep iterating on what is more important, to your point, is like culturally this mindset that if you try something and it doesn't work, that's not failure. I have kind of this expression that I tell my team, and we try to, is that failure is not a destination, right? It's a step towards success, right? And so the culture is less about how do you teach someone a new tool as much as teach them that if they tried it, that's not the end of the narrative, right? And generative AI provides an ability for us to bring forward ultimately a technological change or evolution into their everyday faster, right? Like, we don't have to get requirements, go through sprint planning, develop something and put it out there. This is now putting something into someone's hands and kind of teaching them that you're being a technologist, right? You're actually, so the challenge in the work is not to be dissuaded from trying it again. We do see, though, the folks that are dissuaded are a little bit more on the senior side in terms of experience, to be honest, because if it ain't broke, why fix it? And
well, this is the question I want to ask you, because we listened to Dr. Gary Marcus, who's quite a skeptic with large language models and generative AI, and I felt, I have feelings around it. I mean, some of the ways in which he sees it failing are those big items versus the incremental ways you can use generative AI.
Right.
But is there a demographic challenge here? I think you're alluding to it in terms of CPAs. I don't want to say anything. We're lovely people, but we're not always the most receptive to change. And to me, this is a monumental change in terms of technology. I don't know if I don't want to be hyperbolic. I don't know if we've quite faced something like this. Is that something that's there? And what are the solutions to that? Where there might be a tier. It's also why I'm doing these things myself, the podcast, because I want to make sure I'm moving with this. But there's going to be resistance, and maybe that's a generational divide. How do you deal with that?
I always joke that my friends would always ask me, you did software engineering, you love tech, and you ended up in the tax firm? Like, that doesn't go together. And I always say, like, the thing is, I get that, right? Like, and I'm really proud of where I'm at. So, like, this is by no means meant to be like, I love KPMG, I love my job. Get that out of the way. But I joke with them to be like, what better industry to be in than the tax industry when it comes to technology, because of two fronts. One, everyone has to do taxes, right? So you always get access to effectively a large audience. Like, every single person, as long as they're legally filing their taxes, we can help. And so I have a market for my products, right, and technology. That's every single person in Canada, right, is kind of a potential customer. The other side of it is being like, tax in the finance industry goes at a certain speed, the CPAs, no knocking anyway, where it's a little bit slower. And so therefore, I think I'm guaranteed to always have a job, because as difficult as it is to be a CTO in a tax firm, in the tax industry and the legal industry, it means that there's always going to be a need, because we can we're going to go a little slower than maybe what they hear outside. And I use that as an example to be like, I think I'm probably not doing a greater job, is to say like the last year, what I've noticed is that not in a bad way, the hype has gotten so exciting, right? Like the pamphlet you see that our CPAs see creates a vision of being like, it's either that or nothing. And that can create excitement and fear,
right?
Versus really bringing everyone back to being, so what we're doing a lot of is being like, that's amazing, and that might be in like 20 years, it might be a never, right? It's an exciting, but for us, it's one step, right? What's the baby step? And how do you make it real for people is by finding what they do today, not what you want them to do tomorrow, what they do today, and say, hey, actually, this Copilot prompt can make your life easier. I go back to that convenience. And that's been a journey, and we're making great progress now. So how do we tackle the CPAs is like, say, acknowledge them, be like, that sounds pretty futuristic, right? It's pretty cool, right? But kind of nuts, right? And like, yeah, okay, well, don't worry about that. We can get there. Here's this wonderful future that we can get to, but why don't we do this today?
Right.
And we see great traction. And so suddenly AI isn't AI. It's just like Excel. It's just like calculators. It's just like any other tool. It's like, why wouldn't I just use it? As opposed to making people feel like it's a big change. For the kids, and I'm being a little ageist, not just for illustrative purposes.
You're not including us in that.
Obviously, I'm very old. Have you seen my haircut? And if you can, because it's an audio, my haircut is very clean shaven and lacking of hair. The folks that are already there, you kind of want to sell them on a dream and invite them to be part of the dream.
Well, this is why I think your role is just really interesting, because you have all the knowledge on the technical side, but I mean, a lot of the time, even last year when we talked about this, there's a communication side, and there's a knowing your audience side to this.
That's
right? Because you really described two ways of trying to get everyone on the same page, a group that maybe already started to use this technology and to show them the future, or what you think the future might be, to get them even more energized, and a group that might be resistant, all in the same house. So there's a lot of communication involved, a lot of those human-centric skills that we were talking about, which are still very valuable. I'm going to leave you with this maybe two-part question. You know, we're talking about a year later, and maybe I'll hopefully see you a year later.
For sure.
From here,
I think this is just an annual thing.
This is just now. It's an annual thing. Instead of a holiday card, we'll just get together at Web Summit and say hi. Why don't we just take a little peek? Where do you think this is going? You can treat me as a kid.
Sure.
In that way.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Sell me on the future of this. And I guess part B to this, thinking about a little bit about Dr. Gary Marcus's point of view, where are your concerns around some of the ethical, professional skepticism parts of AI solutions as you increasingly adopt more of those inside KPMG?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'll try to kind of tackle all of them. So where do I see this going? I see this genuinely going to a place where we are going to eliminate a lot of the, it's too easy. Some people say administrative steps, but let's be real. This is going to go to eliminate what today is quality work, seen as quality work, right? Looking at financial information from our clients, really understanding it, sussing it out, and putting it into templates and tools that allow us to do analysis. I see that going away. I see that going away progressively, because there's a lot of human capital and IP in terms of what our people do that we need to gather, that I think agents are going to take over. And they're going to take over in the sense not to replace what we do with the output, but they're going to replace the process in which we mechanically put together.
I don't want to put
no,
you on
go
the spot
ahead.
Here.
Yeah.
Is that in your mind? Is that a year away, a couple years away, a decade away?
Yeah, no, it's not a decade. Honestly, we're doing stuff like that now.
Okay.
Where I think from a technology perspective, tomorrow it's there. Right? And look, we're going to iterate on it. There's two things that's required for, I think, any organization. And I take pride in our organization and where we're at in the journey we've been on, which is the data, right? Like, are you able to actually get the data, like our clients' information and what we do, or like our IP, our precedents and all that stuff, into a digital format that ultimately this generative AI is useless if it can't access the data, right? And so we have that. We have a platform that we put things through. That's our one-port platform. But the second part is then, do you have a process, right, where you can effectively reach both our clients and our people to leverage that tech? Otherwise, you can build something, and this is where I go back to that POCs, right? A lot of people build use cases, but then it's not realizing the gains because no one's using it, right? And you don't have it on scale. And so we are taking an approach of scaled impact by having people through one digital workflow, by having the data into this platform, and then putting our agents and our AI into it. We accomplish really important things, which is we're able to get that process in place. Now, how do we bring humans there? How do we bring our clients there? That's what's going to take a little bit longer, and we shouldn't take that too fast, right? So when? It's not 10 years. To me, it's actually going to go at the speed of what our people and our clients, and go ahead.
It's almost so interesting because it's almost like you have this technology ready to go, and you have to slow it down for everyone to catch up.
Tax industry.
I don't know. Like I'm just trying to think in my lifespan. I don't know if I've heard of something like that where we have to wait for the people to catch up to the technology a little bit because deployment of it might be maybe overwhelming, or they might not use it the way you wanted to.
For sure.
And what about the thoughts on sort of where you're grabbing the data from one port and you're using all of the tools that you have to develop? What about any concerns around where that line is to the handoff between these tools and the practitioner?
Yeah, and see, that's perfect segue. And so like, the text there, and as you said, Garth, like maybe going a little slower in terms of deploying it, because our industry, and this is, I say this a lot, it is a human-centric industry, right? And our technology strategy is human-centric, meaning our clients don't come to us because they're looking for a software to do the work. They're coming to us because they want to look someone in the eye and they want to rely on our knowledge. No matter how powerful the technology is and the data we have today, if it's not kept up to date, and I don't mean client data, financial doc, I mean the IP of kind of tax legislative changes, what we think about as humans when it comes to how do we add value and that constructive. And if we aren't feeding that back in, then it's already old. The tech will never be able to provide that analysis. AI-powered, human-verified. And so where this is going is to still always be a human-centric business. What is going to change is the amount of time that we can sit down and then could say, hey, I actually completed your return, right? And I got a lot of information. Let's sit down and look at it, right? As you and me. And I'm going to tell you, like, I've seen this before, right? And I'm thinking we need to do X, Y, and Z. But let's actually have a conversation as a business advisor, right? And use the tax as a portfolio for us to have that. But never will I say, Garth, here it is, and you go do that. Because at the end of the day, we'll run out of a business too.
Well, yeah, that's also like the fear of that, right? I mean, that's the profession. If we don't keep that space,
for sure,
then
it's gone, right? Yeah, and I always say the software companies are coming for us. Now, obviously, we have this great web summit. The thing that the software companies don't have that we have is data and that human relationship, right? So, anyways, not to end on a bad note, but it's
I think it's a positive note, right? I think it just makes the way in which we're valued, the pie chart of our time maybe is changing from what we knew it to be. And again, we've had other technologies that have changed it, but maybe not the exact same way. The last question I had for you was, obviously you're at KPMG, you're interested in your energies towards your team, the organization, you've done a great job there. What about someone who's not at KPMG? A CPA, sole proprietor, small business, doesn't have the infrastructure, doesn't have a Davin. What advice would you give to them to get them ready for this AI age?
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually, not to make a plug, but that's one of the service offerings we've realized that we need to bring to our clients, whatever size it is. And we've got platforms that can allow individuals who are worried about ChatGPT, not because of its capability, but where's the data going? And I don't want to have a publicly sourced or software that's going to be in my house. And we have platforms, Digital Gateway being a large platform that we effectively bring a GPT into client sites that they can leverage it, but it's hosted in KPMG. So we can give them those assurances of that you don't have to worry about the data going anywhere. It's still leveraging all the powerful OpenAI capabilities, but it's still housing us. And it's a bit of a plug. But the plug there is because having the conversation with clients about this AI literacy and where it is really important. And what we tell our clients is that all of these platforms can provide supercharged amount of productivity. We can help you when it comes to if you have concerns about the platform, we have one. But Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, they're amazing, right? And you can get up and running tomorrow. What's more important is that do you have use cases that can help you, and how do you bring your team into it? And it's the same conversation that we're kind of having internally is what we want to have clients to be like, there's a lot of amazing things to come, but practically, let's talk about how you can get going tomorrow, right? And the platform, a little bit agnostic. Find the thing that's best for you. We'd love to obviously be the service providers, but more importantly is just try it, experiment, and find what you want, who you wish you could get access to more convenience for.
I think that's a super important message. I'll be honest with you, this is the reason that we're doing this. I think that energy to try a use case, and again, it doesn't have to be complete the tax return, whatever the use case that makes sense, a simple, maybe a small one to start. I think just for the profession at large,
that is an important, because I think we are dealing with a bunch of different challenges, including generationally, where there might be some resistance. Davin, as always, pleasure speaking with you.
Very much.
Thanks so much for joining us here in a different location.
Yeah, and let's keep the conversations going and have fun with it. And like I said to your audience, like that last note, it is just experimenting. And I know we're closing now, but I'll add, when we talk to our clients and I tell everyone being like, look at the things that you do every day. Like the thing you do the most is probably replying or reading emails. Right. And if you could do something like even 2% faster because generative AI can help you there, 2% times like the number of times in a day, that's pretty incredible. And if you just look at that value proposition, who would ever say no to trying that? And that's easy to do. So thank you for the opportunity, Garth. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Davin.
Okay, cheers.
Thank you, Davin, for that wonderful conversation. As we wrap up this thoughtful and energizing discussion with Davin, it's clear from our conversation that AI in the professional space at KPMG is still in development and it's being written, but the direction is taking shape, especially under amazing leadership like Davin. A year ago at Collision, we talked about possibility. Moving a year later at Web Summit, we talked about progress and the lessons learned along the way. Davin shared how KPMG moved from strategy to scaled experimentation, how executive buy-in evolved into full-on commitment, and how the firm is actively building digital communities to empower practitioners at every level. But perhaps the most powerful insight Davin offered in our conversation was this: AI is not here to replace our values as CPAs. It's here to elevate it. The focus isn't on doing more with less. It's on starting further ahead. By automating the routine, we make space for what matters most in our profession: judgment, trust, and the human relationships that define our profession. We also explored the tension between hype and reality and how fear and excitement often live side by side. And Davin was candid about the cultural challenges too, from generational divides to the very real resistance to change. But he framed those as opportunities, because he's a very positive guy. Chances to meet people where they are, build confidence through small wins, and shift mindsets from practical use, case by case, time by time. So if you're listening today wondering where to begin, start simple. What task takes you time every day? What process could be made 2% faster with the right prompt or tool? That's your first in. That's the on-ramp to the future. Be sure to follow, rate, and share the podcast with a fellow CPA or future-focused professional. I'm Garth Shariff, and remember, as AI reshapes our profession, it's up to us as CPAs to lead with insight, integrity, and the courage to ask the hard questions. Thank you for listening.